So we're going to release the low back muscles against the wall using a little pink ball or tennis ball. We're going to release a muscle called quadratus lumborum. And quadratus lumborum can cause aching in the low back. It can cause aching in your sacro-iliac joint, which I'll show in a moment, aching deep in the buttock. This muscle will need to be released if you have a tendency to stand on one leg and lean your pelvis to one side, which almost everybody does. Also, if you've ever been told you have a leg length inequality, the quadratus lumborum in the low back is going to be out of balance. So indications would be low back pain, aching in the SI joint, or aching deep in the buttock. It feels better when you kind of get on all fours. It stabilizes the low back, so movement or trying to get up from sitting will cause that low back pain. And then you really know that you want to work with your quadratus lumborum. So I'm going to turn around, I'm going to show you where this muscle lives, then we're going to roll it out on the wall and do some stretching to bring that muscle back to balance. So quadratus lumborum is a muscle that goes from your lowest ribs. So I find the center of my spine, here's my lowest rib area. And then there's little arms that stick out on the side of the spine called the transverse processes. Quadratus lumborum runs up and down along the transverse processes from the top rim of the pelvis, which is here, and the lowest rib, which is right here. And so the muscle lives here on either side of the spine, and when it contracts, it lifts your hip up toward your shoulder, or it brings you into a side bend. Okay, so we're going to take the ball and we're going to place it outside along those arms of the spine. And I like to start in the soft part of the waist and then turn my body so the ball presses in along those arms of the spine and not out in the waist and not on top of the arms of the spine. So you have to kind of turn your body 45 degrees to do that. So I'm going to bring the ball against that area. I can start kind of in the soft part of the waist above the pelvis and then kind of roll my body until I feel the ball press into the arms of the spine. And then I kind of go up toward the lower ribs and down toward the pelvis. I like to rock a little side to side, just a little turning. Notice my body is 45 degrees and I'm not facing directly away from the wall and I'm not perpendicular to the wall. I'm about halfway in between. So right up at that low rib intersection where the low rib comes in at the spine, there's often a very tender spot in quadratus lumborum there. Just kind of wiggle your body around until you can find that spot, and then you can sink, hold, relax your jaw. If you're concentrating, then you might be clenching your jaw. You could do a little movement like side bending, so your pin and stretch in this muscle would be sinking into the point and then side bending away from the wall and then coming back and then away from the wall and then coming back. And then I'm going to move the ball down a little bit, kind of in the middle of that place between the low rib and the spine. I'm going to rock my body around till I feel the ball pressing right up against the side of the spine. Those arms, the transverse processes, and I might do just a little wiggle here on that spot, or I could do my pin and stretch. I could just breathe and relax, or the pin and stretch again would be leaning away and then coming back, and then leaning away and coming back. And I might find one more spot. So again, here I am. Now I'm down just above the pelvis, and I'm still in that soft spot part of the waist. I bump up against the spine. I wiggle, I find a little spot there. I take a couple breaths. So then I'll roll up and down just clearing, just kind of checking the whole of the quadratus lumborum muscle through the pelvis up to the low rib, and then I might roll right onto those arms of the spine themselves, roll around there. So now we're going to stretch the quadratus lumborum and bring a little tension into it. It's good to, after you roll, just bring a little tension and do a little stretching of the muscles that you've been working with. So again, quadratus lumborum lifts the hip. So just doing a couple of lifts of the hip to kind of reactivate the whole of the muscle. And then when we're gonna stretch it, I really like to be near the wall when I stretch. So any kind of side bend is gonna help open up that quadratus lumborum. So I might kind of push against the wall, lean away, get a nice stretch there. I wanna keep anchoring that hip down. And then to add even extra attention into quadratus lumborum, I can bend my opposite knee, and then that's gonna allow me to drop a little lower to open up that QL. I'm gonna take a nice big breath. Great. And then I'll straighten up. And then I wanna do the same thing on the other side. So I'm gonna bring the ball back into that soft space in between the top of the pelvis and the lowest rib. I'm gonna go up and down along the arms of the spine that stick out. Start up right at the base of the lowest rib, then clear the middle area, then move down just above the pelvis. And then I'm gonna go up and down around that area, just taking a minute or two to do the whole thing, and then do my stretch. And that should help alleviate some of those symptoms you might be having in the low back, around the sacro-iliac joint, or aching deep in the buttocks.